everyone, it's me, Noah Meehan of the Arc Truth, and today we're going to be talking about the Democratic Party and the fact that it's losing a lot of voters, more specifically, young voters, like young men. Now, it's no surprise that the Democratic Party has been dealing with this issue for the last few years, and I think it started in 2016, but we're already seeing the effects where a lot of young men are definitely leaning towards Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump managed to win young men, young white men, as well as young Latino men, and even had a stronger support among young black men. And it was such a big deal that he nearly won the youth vote back in 2024 over Kamala Harris. I cannot overstate this enough because typically, based upon old data at least, the youth tended to vote more towards the liberals, at least whenever they're involved with politics. And the Democratic Party has often taken advantage of that, more specifically in terms of student loan debt, even gay marriage and abortion, that sort of thing. But now, with the fact that other issues have been arising, such as immigration, as well as the cost of living, and the economy, inflation, that sort of thing, their original stance or their original strategy is evidently not working. At least unless you're a young upper class woman, then those strategies tend to be more focused on you. But the problem is that it's evident that that young men are leaving the Democratic Party, even if they're not going with the Republicans. They decided that they are having enough of trying to deal with the Democratic Party because it's constantly been berating them just for their very existence. Everything that they do is considered toxic masculinity, and the best people that they apparently consider the best of the best in terms of masculinity would be people like David Hogg, who is the vice chair and may potentially lose his seat. Hassan Piker, who's been so radical to the point where he literally supports terrorism, and even at one point actually said that America deserved 9/11. And of course, Harry Sisson, the Democratic shill who basically loves to talk out of his ass and likes to be a complete hypocrite whenever something doesn't go his way. And he's just a smug elitist asshole. I'm saying that's basically Harry Sisson in a nutshell. But in spite of the Democratic Party's efforts in order to try to get these people to rally young men to the Democratic cause, it's not working out. In fact, it's gone so bad that apparently the Democratic Party are spending $20 million on a study to see how men talk. Which is honestly kind of insulting if you think about it, because it kind of it really does treat us as if we're some kind of animal, some kind of subhuman, something that's away from humanity, if that is a good explanation. And yeah, it's pretty much insulting. But the overall thing is that this study is not going to achieve how young men are going to... it's not going to bring young men over to the Democratic Party, because the problem is that the Democratic Party... there are actually a few things with the Democratic Party. First off, there's always been this talk about marketing, trying to be authentic. And I'm not going to lie. The idea of being authentic is definitely a major thing that a lot of men are very focused on. That's why more people tend to flock more young men tend to flock more towards Donald Trump instead of Kamala Harris. We kind of could see that she was nothing more than a puppet and a politician, and let's just be honest, she wasn't really there. Probably not as much as Joe Biden still, but yeah. There's not really much to say about her, and that's why they lost. That's partly why they lost the election. But they're missing the key component here, and that is their ideology, which is a combination of identity politics, a little bit of socialism, and just overall misandry. And that only makes me think, why the hell, and that also goes into the issue of the fact that the Democratic Party does not really focus on the issues, like the issue of cost of living, or the economy, or even immigration. And even when they do, it tends to be on the side where a lot of people, where it's an 80-20 issue, whenever a lot of people go, whenever there's more of a common sense thing that most people would see, oh yeah, this is either a right thing to do or a wrong thing to do, the Democratic Party goes with the other 20%. They go with a minority for some reason. Probably it's just because they want to spy Donald Trump for some reason. But again, this only negates the fact that they even give a damn about the issue. And even then, even if they do give a damn about the issue, they always chose the wrong approach. I mean, again, just take a look at how they try to prop up illegal immigrants, for example. But there's another issue as well that I think needs to be addressed. They don't the fact that they still have their ideology. And I know that I said that before, but I mean, it's very trench deep within the Democratic Party. And here's the thing. A lot of people do say that in order for the Democratic Party to actually be able to get young men back into the fray and to actually vote for them, they need to ditch said ideology. And I'm one of those people that argue something like that. I'm a conservative, but I could understand why young men would gravitate to the Democratic Party if they got rid of this ideology. But the thing is, they can't and they won't. They can't because, well, the far left has obviously been taking over, in all honesty. And at this point in time, there's only two major factions within the Democratic Party. There's the establishment Democrats, the neolibs as people call them, who tend to be people like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those kinds of people who try to tend more to gain more power for themselves. And while they do focus on some Democratic issues that they obviously support, it's more as a means of supporting their own self-interest instead of what their constituents actually voted for. Then there is, of course, the far left, or the woke left, whatever you like to call them. And those guys, they are very, very radical and these guys are heavily into identity politics, into socialism, into far left policies that are just spreading into. They're being a major focal point within the Democratic Party, to the point where the establishment Democrats, as much as they want to continually use them as a means in order to prop up their own power, and don't get me wrong, they still do that. They still have to try to make it look like they're actually listening, that they actually give a damn about what the far left says. And it's gotten to the point where people like AOC and the Squad have actually gotten some power, and even there's a civil war going on within the Democratic Party. Case in point, David Hogg. Now, they don't want to continue on. I want to also mention something. The reason why there's this fight between the two factions is because there isn't anyone who is a populist within the Democratic Party. You had those people potentially. There was RFK Jr. Say what you will about him. He still had some branding, some support behind him. There was Tulsi Gabbard and a few others, but they have since left the Democratic Party and become independents, or even in the case of Tulsi Gabbard, a Republican. And again, it just proves my point. There is no one there who is a left-wing populist that would be able to try to promote some kind of change within the Democratic Party at the expense of the establishment Democrats, but not so much as to allow the woke left to actually obtain power. And at this point in time, the average Joe liberals, they're just stuck in that position of, do I either continue to support the establishment Republicans or establishment Democrats who do not really care much for me and they don't really want change, or do I go with the woke left who are very much into the radical shit that, in all honesty, I do not want. So again, there's that problem to deal with. And then there's the fact that they won't change their ideology. And again, this is mainly in regards to the Democratic leadership, both with the woke left and the establishment Democrats in power. They don't want to, because it means that if they decide to get rid of the whole identity politics shtick that they've been professing for the last decade, that means that it doesn't work. That the right was correct. That the right was right. And they don't want that. There's a sense of pride as a result of trying to maintain this idea of identity politics in order to continually virtue signal, in order to prop up their sense of moral superiority, even when it is realistically and morally, of course, wrong, and it just doesn't line up with the situation, the political situation that is in front of them. They just can't do it. It's kind of like how there are a lot of people who think that communism is still a good idea, in spite of the fact that it's been applied multiple times through different means, like with Leninism, Stalinism, Pol Pot, Maoism, so many things. And yet, for some reason, they always think that that communism is a good idea, but it just wasn't applied the correct way, or that in theory it works on paper. Which, by the way, if a theory works on paper but it's not applicable in real life, then I would say by definition it doesn't work. But that's just me. What do I know? I'm an anti-communist. Nonetheless, it's very similar to how the Democratic Party props up with identity politics. They can't and they won't get rid of this. And it's going to be the downfall of their party unless they change their ways, and very soon. I'm not saying that that the Democratic Party is going to collapse or anything within the next 5 years, or 10 years or something like that. But the fact that you're losing a lot of the youth vote should worry the Democrats, because they're supposed to be the next generation of voters. The moment you lose them, at least in your current form, you lose them forever. My name is Noah Meehan on The Arc Truth. Please post your comments down below, like this video, subscribe, and share for friends. Also, if you have any issues regarding my videos, such as how I speak, my improv, or whatever, please post in the comment section down below or directly message me. Thank you.
West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain.